All right, it is 12 o'clock. Let's see here, just checking everything, making sure we are good to go. Okay. Welcome back. You all know who I am, Caroline Best, founder of the Tao Horsemanship. Those of you that don't know who I am, welcome. Welcome to the Wisdom of Tao, the way of inner alchemy. Give me 1 second. There we go. So today's episode, number 4, is about the spirituality of horsemanship. And this is a topic that is near and dear to my heart. I have been teaching this, the spirituality of horsemanship. Oh my gosh, since I first started, got back into horses and first started my business, the Tao of Horsemanship, which also used to be formerly called Rider Horsemanship. So you guys will see a lot of my YouTube videos will have intros and outros in regards to my former last name, married name prior to my married name now, Caroline Best. So the spirituality of horsemanship has been near and dear to my heart my entire life. And that's why I'm doing this podcast. It's a big reason. Of course, my business is Tao Horsemanship. And for most of you that already know who I am, I've been a practicing Taoist since I was a teenager, about the age of 15. So the spirituality of horsemanship came about as I was developing my business, Tao Horsemanship, and getting back into horses in the early 2000s. And the spirituality of horsemanship became the first workshop slash clinic. I wouldn't really call it a clinic because there was no auditors. They weren't allowed because it was such a deep dive and very personal. It was definitely, definitely the first area for me to teach in my method of horsemanship, in my way of being with horses, and what horses were able to help me become in their presence. And that's really important. I think it's important. I know a lot of people that believe it's important to have that level of connection with horses, with yourself, with nature, with others. It's not just me. So today's podcast is going to focus more on what the spirituality of horsemanship is, what it means, specifically the power of letting go. And that's where we're going to pull this back into the personal development side of what I do, what I teach, what I coach, and how it's such a full circle when it comes to horsemanship, the power of letting go. I would say that it's the number one thing that must happen with people, with humans, when they are working with horses. And so, this podcast, we're going to talk about all of it. I'm going to try and do my best to, not ramble and dive into, the personal development side of this topic, the horsemanship side of it, and of course, the horses themselves, what I believe they they are, their whole sense of being. And it just happens that this weekend I'm having a 3-day spirituality of horsemanship workshop. It's full, and I've got students coming from all over the country. Some are current students of my big program, some are new to my work, and they're coming to experience what this means. They're going to be working with me and my schoolmasters, my private herd. And that's really important. This isn't about working with you and your horse right now. This isn't about auditing. This is a really private space, a sacred space that's being created, and everyone's going to learn how to create that within themselves, within their energy, their chakra system, and then how to connect to that through heart coherence with the horses, as well as nervous system regulation, and take it into actual training and development, and take it into the work. So as woo-wooey as a spirituality of horsemanship sounds, and esoteric and out there and up in the clouds, it really isn't. And if you know me, there's quite a balance of logic and artistry. And I think I do a good job using both sides of my brain. I am an artist, in many forms. And my degree in college was Bachelor of Fine Arts with a concentration in watercolor and in pencil, fine arts. And then I was going to get my master's. But I decided last minute not to, and I certainly don't regret that. So my art has taken a whole different direction over the years. Started my own graphic design and web development company many, many years ago, slash marketing firm many years ago before I got back into horses. And so that level of creativity was through the design work. But I love to write, and my horsemanship is my artistry now. And so where I'm going with all of that is just giving you a background of the balance of the logic, the business side of me. I am a business owner, I'm an entrepreneur, and I do all of my own business and marketing myself. So there is that very organized, structured side of my brain, but there's also that dreamy, romantic, um, creative side, very much so, very, very much so. And that's also a big contribution under trying to understand myself as a learner and as a human being, and a person and a friend and, a partner, a spouse, a sibling, just understanding yourself and what motivates you and how you operate, how you think, and why you feel the way you do. It's led me to a lot of learning, continual learning, always a student of everything. And so that's what you guys are getting, trying to give you as much of a full circle approach and broad spectrum of this topic with some finer nuances and of course you can always sign up for the spirituality spirituality of horsemanship workshop. I'll definitely be promoting another one for January of 2026. So the power of letting go. Before I dive into what this a little bit more about what we're going to be talking about today, what I find in my experiences as a teacher and a student, but I'm going to talk about a teacher right now, is my students. I know that is the number one weakness, for the lack of a better word, or issue or challenge that they themselves as human beings have when it comes to working with horses. And you don't have to know my method. This is something that I learned as a student in my travels, studying with some of the best in every discipline, with a strong focus in reining and dressage, especially. Is we don't let go. We get so focused, laser focused, linear, um, and attached. Like we gotta have it. Raise your hand. Isn't that the number one problem with horsemanship? Even natural horsemanship, which I studied when I got back into horses because it was the biggest, back in the early 2000 actually, natural horsemanship was huge. Pat Pirelli was really out there and very dominant within the equine industry. And whether they wanted to or not, Linda and Pat, they actually created their own discipline, natural horsemanship. Yeah, I mean, I think it's a discipline, just like reining is, and just like dressage and all these other sports that we do with horses. Natural horsemanship has its own niche, right? So while I was studying, and I too, I was a student, I can't say that I didn't struggle with being attached and focused, but I had an advantage because before I got back into horses, I had a client of mine in my design business that was a former psychiatrist or psychotherapist, 25 years, and got burned out and went into life coaching. So he became a client of mine. I designed all his materials and his website and so forth. And in part of that client relationship, he became my coach. And it was one of the most profound experiences for me ever because I had spent so much of my adult life after college, especially like after college, I was a starving artist and I was a bartender and a waitress. And because I worked so hard to pay my way through school, I paid my way through school. No one paid for my education. I played for a few years after college, where most of my friends went on to get their masters or get married or, you know, begin their careers. I didn't. Don't regret that at all. The point I'm making is when I think around the age of 25, I landed my first career as an illustrator. I was hired in Ocean City, Maryland, for one of the largest companies that owned multiple hotels and restaurants and properties in Ocean City, the Harrison Group. So my first job was an illustrator, but then, they would send me up to DC, Baltimore and DC to learn graphic design, Adobe products. So that's how I became a graphic designer, but was still using my illustration skills. And I did that for a long time. And then I started my own business. But the point I'm making with all of this, giving you this bit of a background, is when I decided I wanted to get back into horses around the year 2000, 2000, probably 2002. I spent 2 years, and this is with my client who was the life coach. And I'd spent all of my 30s, most half of my 20s and all of my 30s being so laser focused and um, absolutely linear and driven and ambitious to start my design business and do well and make money and achieve the material, the things that I wanted. And I was married at the time, and my husband at the time was also a graphic designer and web developer. He did all of the websites actually. And we were on the same path together. It was very materialistic, and we paved our way and achieved, I at least, I will speak for myself, achieved what I wanted to achieve on a materialistic um, level, and had a fabulous time in DC for 7 years, and where my late horse was aging on my parents' tranquil and quiet little farm, 5-acre farm in Princess Anne, Maryland, on the Eastern Shore. So it was just a 2.5 hour drive to get to see them, on the weekends. But this side where, I had no idea who I was. Like I can't even explain how different I was before I got back into horses. Sure, I'm the same person, but I led such a different life. And and it's kind of like I started out becoming a practicing Taoist as a teenager, and it was absolutely beautiful process for me as I continued my growth, my personal development well into my 20s. And then I took a little break after college and a little respite. And then when I got hired, um, from in Ocean City as an illustrator and a budding beginner graphic designer, um, I still didn't have like that fire in me yet. And I spent 3 years with that company, and then I had the fire, and I met my husband at the time, and then I was like, that's it. Now I'm ready. I'm ready to go, and nothing's going to get in my way, and I'm going to become successful financially and however I measured that at the time. But it was such a laser focused mindset. And I had no idea. It didn't matter what type of books I was reading, which I have a plethora in my office and in my guest house, a library that I've been collecting since, I was a teen. And when I met this coach, I was getting to a point where I was burning out from this business, and how many of you can relate to burnout in your career or burnout in your life, whatever's happening. And in 1 month, it was life changing. You have to be ready though. You have to be ready. We're going to watch a video. I'm going to play this 10-minute video for you all on YouTube that is just, for me, it's an amazing synopsis or summary of what this podcast is becoming and will be and what I'm all about. And it's not just about me, but it's about life and our perspective and our mindset and how we choose to think about things. It's really going to be, I hope for you, as enlightening as I have found it. But getting back to this burnout, before I met Ray, my coach, my client, yeah, I was starting to get depressed, and I was starting to get very restless, and restless in my marriage. I think we had been married 7 years, restless in life. I was bored. My horse was at this point in 2002. I think Brandy had passed. I think he passed in 2000. I can't quite remember, but I had no idea my late horse was going to affect me. I had no idea how much I was going to cry and would continue to cry and grieve for like a year. It was such a trigger for me. I had no idea I was that attached to him in so many ways, and that I would miss him in so many ways. And his passing, was a catalyst for me to get back into horses. I gave myself a 2 year respite. My dad had found little legend, my little Arabian there in the middle of the painting. And I really didn't want anything to do with them because he was very green. Even though he was 11 years old, he was very green, and absolute nightmare to take him away from the barn sour, spooky on the trail, sweet, beautiful and sweet, but just, definitely more complicated and challenging and out of my skill sets, my wheelhouse. Definitely, I was not a horse trainer, and my backyard horse Brandy was a natural, organic evolution of relationship and the artist inside of me, the dreamer that was like, hey, the Black Stallion, if Alec Ramsey can ride bridleless on the beach, I can do bridleless and bareback in the 500 acres behind my house where we keep him. And I achieved all of that. I achieved everything that, you can think of, but I didn't do it because I was laser focused. I didn't do it because I was going to become a horse trainer. I did it naturally. And it's interesting. So then I get into this mindset where now I've got to make all this money, and I've got to catch up, and I want to be successful, and I want to be able to afford a nice place and my own cars and travel and all that. And so, I hit this burnout, didn't understand why. Now I do. And you can't keep up that pace no matter what. And where's your balance too in life? What are the things? And I had a very social life. All my best friends and their husbands and their families, and just had a phenomenal network of friends, and also network with my business. So, I was constantly busy. But I read, I had my downtime too, and I was, hiking and enjoying nature as well, and cooking. And yeah, I mean, I can't say that I didn't have balance, but my soul was really, really empty. I didn't thought about having kids, but it just didn't feel right. It didn't feel right, even though my ex-husband was great with kids, our friends' kids, my family and brother's kids. He was great. He was great with animals and great with kids, but it has to be more than that, right? It has to be something that you both want together, and something that you just, in my life, when I know things are right for me, I don't question it. It never is questioned. It's like I feel it, I know it, this is an absolute, and I move into it, and I never regret it. And I never had that feeling. Like I had that feeling marrying him, but I never had that feeling having a family with him. So didn't have a family, obviously. Now I'm blessed with my stepson and my husband now. But anyway, the thing that I learned about letting go, it's a continual process. Don't get me wrong. It's continuous. It's a continuous that's what I love about being a practicing Taoist is I'm always learning and I'm always evolving and growing. And don't get me wrong, there's been some dark periods in my life where I was stagnant and stuck. And for a year, for 2 years, we all go through periods like that. The You just hope that you have enough of a foundation in whatever your faith or your spirituality or your skill sets, that you have enough that you can draw back upon, that you can fill yourself up with again, when you feel depleted. That's key. That's how I got myself out of the darkness that I had experienced a few years back. For a few years, life just happens to knock you down sometimes, not once, but many times, over and over again, with many different things. So letting go, holy cow, the first thing I learned about letting go, and I had no idea that I had issues with attachment and expectations. I think expectations, I was beginning to become aware that I had a lot of expectations in my life, expectations for myself, expectations for everyone in my life. That's a whole nother podcast, but it's definitely tied to attachment. Um, but when with this life coach, what I realized, the most profound thing that I had to let go of, but you have to wrap your brain around it, right? You got to fully understand what it is you have to let go of, is I was in such a mindset and in such a perpetual lifestyle of when I wanted it or I thought about it, I just jumped and went after it. And sure, you have to have certain steps in place, especially with your own business. You can't just, yeah, you gotta know what you're doing. There are building blocks, there are like instructions to certain things to do them well. But in this case, it was my whole approach, my whole mindset about achieving whatever it is I wanted to achieve. And that is probably the only good thing that I took away from natural horsemanship in my studies, because everything I learned in my natural horsemanship was not natural. And I was learning from the best of the best. From the best to the best, and they're certified instructors. So it really wasn't natural, and that's what I didn't like about the term of natural horsemanship. It really wasn't. It was very mechanical. But what I learned about letting go with natural horsemanship and with this particular method of natural horsemanship, I'm not going to name names, but it was the top of the top back then, the best of the best. Um, was and it was never presented like this exactly. This is my takeaway in my own learning as a student. So here I am in this, living in DC, Washington, DC, living that life, riding the subways, meeting clients downtown, and enjoying the museums, enjoying the restaurants, enjoying Rock Creek park system, and the hiking and a little bit of jogging, enjoying everything that the city and the suburbs could offer. What I learned when I stepped out of that life, literally stepped the hell out and stepped into horses, back into horses, full time, bought myself a farm, moved my ex-husband and I, my husband at the time, down to this farm on the eastern shore of Maryland, outside of Salisbury, where I graduated. We both graduated from college, and close to my parents, took my crazy, busy social life, clubbing, techno music, you name it, had a blast. Took myself out of that city and went into a space of absolute quiet. The thing that I learned about letting go is you can't be attached. You can't to a specific goal with horses. You can if you want to kill their spirit. You can if you want a dead broke horse. You can if you want your horse to be nothing but mechanical and learned helplessness. But I didn't. And that was the biggest, I'd say it was hypocritical, the biggest contradiction in my natural horsemanship learning was it really wasn't natural. It was totally mechanical. And I just thank God that, all I knew was my late horse and that way of being with him. And so when I jumped back into horses, it was night and day. I don't care how great this natural horsemanship method or was, this discipline was becoming, it was better than traditional by far, but it was still mechanical and it was still laser focused and it was still linear and it was still forcing. And while natural horsemanship did not teach me how to let go, I just kind of like hit that, smacked that wall as hard as I could because I went, wow, here I am going away for 3 months, coming to Florida with Legend, to study natural horsemanship with the best of the best for 3 months. And holy cow, it was so linear. It was almost like being back in the city in my former life, in my former career, in my former business. And yet I knew it couldn't be that way, is what I'm saying. It's like nobody taught me about letting go. It was my own awareness that this isn't the way you work with horses. You can't go after it. You have to allow it. And you have to allow the horse to be who the horse needs to be to show you what they need. And so letting go in that particular instance, of working with horses was sure we need to work on this exercise, this lesson. Um, but working on the lesson and the exercise doesn't mean that it's got to be a certain way. And when I see my students, every one of them is attached to what they think it needs to be, what they visually remember. Well, but I'm watching your videos, Caroline, or I studied with somebody else, and this is the way it needs to be. So they have an imprint in their mind or, in their muscle memory, obviously, from doing something a certain way that this is how it has to be. And letting go, literally, you've got to let all that go. I'm gonna I'm gonna share with you guys some of my I'm gonna give you some examples of in lessons that you can practice, things you can do to help you let go and not be so laser focused in everything in life. The horses are a metaphor, they are an opportunity for you to practice this way of being with your horses. And for me, they are the best teachers. The whole spirituality of horsemanship for me came about because of my relationship with my backyard horse growing up. That's what I wanted to bring into, my into back into horses. It's like, you know, I spent 2 years as a student traveling and studying with the best of the best so I could learn technique. So I could learn technique and reining, technique. Well, my classical dressage continued and continued and continued, and I am a working equitation instructor, but I wanted to learn the mechanics and but not to the point where I compromised my horse. That is one thing that for most of you, you might already know this in some of whether personally you've worked with me or you've seen this in some of my videos or previous podcasts is I've never had to compromise the horse. I've never been in that position. I've never been in that position. And and I can say that because of the way that I grew up with my backyard horse and the way that, as kids in my family dynamic, me particularly because of my love for animals and that made me very close. My father and I had such a connection with the animals, more so than my brothers, who are wonderful. They're natural. You think I have a good seat, my brothers have the same seat. It's mind blowing. And when they come, they ride bareback. It's just innate in us. And they love animals too, but I'm the one that pursued that. And so my dad took me under his arm and, you know, carefully, like he just always supported that. And I just always thought about my horse. I never had that side of me that couldn't, I was never in a position where, and that's why I don't show. That is why I don't show. I quit showing, had a big stand up fight with my father when I think I was 9, right before I got Brandy. I'd been thrown so many times. I literally was unconscious so many times from lesson horses or my pony before Brandy. I was done at that age. And I didn't like it. I didn't like how horses were treated. I didn't like it. And so I've always been firm with that. I've never had a problem. I don't have those kinds of regrets that so many people have. I wish I hadn't done that, or I wish I hadn't sent my horse away to this person. And I came close when I got back into horses. I came close with Smokey because I'd never had a horse with that much trauma that went catatonic, that was explosive, that busted me up. I never had a horse like that. But that also became my journey, my learning journey into rehabilitation, big time rehabilitation. So let's talk a little bit more about what this keep me on track here. So if you all read the post or the email, um, today's topic again is the spirituality of horsemanship, the power of letting go, both in your life and in your horsemanship, working with your horse. When you seek it, you lose it. The secret to letting go. And that's going to be the quick video we're going to be watching. When you seek it, you lose it. The secret of letting go. So there's a famous quote by a monk, and he said, Zen is not about thinking, it's about being awake. Not about thinking, it's about being awake. Bringing this up because everything ties in. We're connecting the dots here. So letting go, it's not about thinking, it's about being present. It's about being awake, awakened, present. And this again is a full circle back to what is spirituality? How do you define spirituality within your life? So in this episode, we explore one of the most profound paradoxes of both spirituality and horsemanship. The more you try to control, the further you drift from what you seek. Yeah, it is a paradox. If you want to be spiritual with your horse, you're not here to control them. You're not here to make them do things. But then how do you achieve whatever you want to achieve? I'm working on the canter pirouette in the piaffe with Lovey, and I cannot wait to film this and show you. And hopefully I'll be able to show you guys before Christmas of this year. Absolutely. And we've had some setbacks. She had EPM. EPM is, I think both my vets, I have two wonderful vets. One's a chiropractor too. EPM stays in your system forever, just like Lyme's disease. And so most of our horses have it. And they get EPM from parasites, specifically parasites from the possum. Doesn't mean a possum had been around the property because I don't see any. I see raccoons, but this is a parasite specifically to the possum. But it can be in their feed, it can be traces in their hay. It doesn't necessarily mean you have to see the animal itself. Um, and when she got EPM, there was also stress going on. We just lost Legend. We had Sundance living almost a year after Lay, and that just did it for Lovey. That was her family. And so with the EPM, I treated it, but she still has some weaknesses from it. So that's why it's taken us a couple of years to come back because of the EPM. And then Sundance passed and she colicked and she was in the hospital. Then we were dealing with ulcers. And we're still not over the ulcers because I have not treated them as aggressively as I should. So we're still with all of this. But where I'm going is here's the duality, right? Spirituality and horsemanship. That's what I'm all about. That's what I'm here to teach. How do you achieve every level, whatever you want to achieve with your horsemanship, whether it's recreational trail riding and you have a really happy, healthy, safe horse and partner to ride with, whether it's raining, whatever sport you're into. I personally, and this is what my program teaches, my Dream Riding Partnership program, it begins with a spirituality course, but it teaches versatility in your horse as an athlete, and it teaches emotional versatility, emotional agility, nervous system regulation. So that you and your horse can set out to do whatever you want to do together in a happy, healthy, and safe partnership. And so, how do you develop horses? How do I develop horses? How do I rehabilitate horses? How do I work with some of the most dangerous, problematic, stressed out horses without trying to control them? Hmm. We're going to talk about that. And what is the icing on the cake of all of this? All of you that are on my YouTube channel, I think I'm one of the very few professional horse trainers out there that shows on my YouTube channel the depth and the level of love and friendship and connection and partnership you can have with horses. Both in a technical aspect, whether I'm showing you a riding, balanced riding video or a suppling contact video or something, a beautiful straight or bent in the direction of movement, half pass or leg yield, whatever lateral movement or whatever we're doing, trail riding, you see my horses are happy and they're super focused and connected to me. And the play and the partnership is just off the charts. So that's what this is all about, right? That's what this is all about. I mean, why can't we have it all? What I'm teaching and what I have today with the remainder of my herd, which is 5 now, used to be all the way up to 13, but that rescued, rehabilitated, made good connections with my students, and sold those horses, some of them to my students. But the point I'm making is I'm down to 5 horses. And this is the same type of relationship and partnership I had with my late horse. So I'm bringing it back full circle. And it is in a more natural and organic way of working and developing. It's not this, sure, there's a system and sure, there's structure, but within the structure, there has to be flexibility. At any time, there's got to be adaptability. That's letting go right there. That's letting go, where you're not so laser focused that you create this dead broke horse that is afraid to show you how they feel because you're never listening or they get punished. And even if, punishment doesn't mean you're beating your horse, but punishment is pressure. If all of a sudden your horse doesn't do what you want and you just go, okay, we're going to sack you out in the round pen. I'm going to, run and run and run you. And we see that with some of our natural horsemanship trainers out there. This excessive operant conditioning, positive and negative reinforcement, or just, excessive pressure is just awful. So, yeah, we're going to explore the paradoxes, and I'm already talking about it now, of spirituality and horsemanship. So true connection with ourselves, our horses, and the universe doesn't come from force, striving, or overthinking. And that's where I was before my other life. It arises when we let go. And this coincides with the woo-wee principle in Taoism, which I teach and talk a lot about. Woo-wee being basically effortless action. So it doesn't mean you don't get from point A to point Z. It's how you get there. My horsemanship is all about getting from point A to point Z, the beginning and the end result. but it's the middle, it's the process, it's the journey. It's how you go about it that makes the difference. How you go about it. And to me, that in and of itself is letting go. Yeah, look, you don't let go of, yeah, we need to accomplish this. Maybe not today, maybe not this week, but our end goal is that my horse can back away from me and back away from me with relaxation, which tells me they have trust and confidence and they feel safe, but with responsiveness, meaning it's a 1, 2, 3, let's go. So we're going to journey into the heart of what it means to be awake and present, aware, and unattached to the relentless stream of thoughts that shape our inner stories. So, my example right there of starting from the beginning to the end. And we'll use the letter A and the letter Z. A is your beginning of every lesson, everything you're learning. And Z is the end result, what you want it to look like, what you want it to feel like, what you want it to be. It's the middle. It's the process. All those letters between A and Z. Though that's your journey. And that is when you look at it that way and you take the time to go into every lesson and every new learning experience with your horse, even if you know it and they don't. If you go in it with, yep, we're going to get from A to Z eventually, but I'm not here to compromise you, your spirit, your confidence horse, your trust. What do you value? And I'm not here to compromise me either, make myself feel bad because I've done it wrong or it came on, how many? I just had a coaching, every single one of us has been with a trainer who's just roughed up our horses. I have not. I did not do that. But every one of my students, and I've worked with thousands, I just had a coaching call yesterday, and another student, who brought in a trainer, and the trainer, just because his horse was shut down, young horse was shut down, this trainer thought they could get bigger and stronger and go harder on this horse, which turned this horse into an aggressive horse. But aggression is really being defensive. This horse just became super defensive. So it started rearing, it started pinning its ears, it started biting, it started kicking, it started charging. And we call it aggression, but it's not. It's aggression because the horse is protecting itself. It really starts out as being defensive. It's just trying to protect itself. And so that's how this student in Hawaii found me and my program and joined my program and has been working on it and doing an excellent job. She's a little stuck, and her stuckness, it has everything to do with her right now and where she needs to be to help her horse to the next level of his learning. And so, gosh, it just blows my mind. So being awake, being present, how easy is that for most of you? How easy or not is it for you to be in the moment with your horse? You've got to understand where you are in order for things to change. And this is all part of letting go. One of the things that I try to do in my teaching, the way I teach, is not trying to be so linear, like right now, and allowing you to figure out how you got there. So here's the example. I just brought it up by asking you the question: when you are learning with your horse and things aren't going the way you want them to go or they need to go, what do you do? What are your strategies? Do you keep pushing? Do you get frustrated? Do you get irritated? Do you get pissed off? Do you get angry? Do you feel disappointed, defeated, stupid? How's your self-esteem? And wherever you are in that spectrum, meaning it doesn't feel good for you, and that could be because of X, Y, and Z I just explained. Your self-esteem, you get angry, you feel insecure about your abilities, or you get angry because you just think it's the horse and not you. What do you do about it? Do you just keep pushing? Do you stop? If you stop, if you hit that pause button, that's part of letting go. That's the first step to letting go. When you don't hit that pause button, you're just pushing past and pushing through. And it never comes out well for you or your horse. Now, because horses are passive by nature, most horses are going to put up with that push, and they'll learned helplessness. They'll just shut down completely. But there's that other percent, a smaller percent, that are going to push back. And those horses we deem aggressive, dominant, fighter, or they're flighty. One way or another, they're trying to survive and express, survive. They either go into fight mode to protect themselves or flight mode to protect themselves. But that's probably 25% of the horses. 75% shut down. And again, that's because horses by nature are passive. So they take it and they take it and they take it. And I always say I'd much rather have a reactive horse, whether it's fight or flight, because they are transparent. They are expressing how they feel. They're telling you, they are communicating. You may not like the way they're communicating, which we deem as bad behavior, but they are communicating. It's the horses that don't communicate that end up surprising you. And those are the horses that end up putting you in the hospital. Yep. Because one day, whether it's trigger stacking, they've just gotten pushed too far, too long, or something wakes them up and they're like, what the hell am I doing here? And then you have a horse that you've never seen before. So just by pausing, by stopping what we do, we can begin the process of letting go. Did you ever think about that? Wow. So in this write-up about the podcast, I wrote that you're going to learn how to observe thoughts without identifying with them, meaning you're going to allow yourself to think about whatever you need to think about, but how do you not be attached to that? Meaning, when you're thinking a certain way or about certain things, do you get emotional? The difference between not thinking and freedom from thought. So we're not here to disassociate and not feel at all. But how do you develop freedom from thought? It all comes back to non-attachment. It all comes back to letting go, releasing. Taoist and Zen teachings on Wu Wei, which I mentioned earlier, effortless action, and how they mirror the natural harmony horses seek in us. I say harmony, basically it means congruency within us. Why connection, trust, and flow in horsemanship emerge when we stop trying to make them happen. How to create effortless flow and harmony with horses and everything you do in life. So yeah, this workshop that my students are coming to this weekend, this is what they're going to be learning. And they're going to be learning it through some fundamental core exercises, my foundational exercises that every horse and human learn when they study my method. When a horse comes to me to be, I don't do this anymore, to be trained, or when you join my big program and you're developing yourself and your horse together, these are the foundational exercises. And that's what, so through these exercises, this weekend in my workshop, and this is what I teach in my program, they're going to be able to learn. So this is what I call a container. So in my method of teaching, every lesson, every exercise is a container. It is a structure in which you are learning about yourself and about your horse. It is a process. And the cool thing is, and again, here's that full circle of the way I teach, is there's so many building blocks. Those are the skills. That's the technique. There's so many building blocks. You will be learning the actual lesson, but in a way that is truly natural and organic and almost subconscious. Because again, I'm trying to teach you not to be so linear that you get in there and you go, oh, I need to back my horse up. I can back my horse up. Bam, 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 bam. Just like natural horsemanship teaches you. No, you'll eventually be able to back your horse up. But it's what happens, what transpires between the two of you during this process that means everything to your horse and you. Once in a while, I'll get a student that joins my big program and they get frustrated. And I say once in a while, it might be one a year. I often, I always at this point, especially with the coaching session, I'm like, what do you do for a living? And so it's very important because if you come from a very analytical research type of even IT, if you even mathematical, if you're stuck in your left hemisphere of your brain constantly, my program is going to be so difficult for you. It is going to be so difficult because you are where I was before in my previous career too, where you're on that straight road, that linear road from A to Z, and you want those connecting letters. You want them in a straight line. You don't want them deviating and taking you all over the place to get to Z. You want a straight line to Z, and it doesn't work that way. Not if you want the spirituality of horsemanship. If you want this experience with your horse, this learning experience, this training experience, this development to be a spiritual experience that brings both you and your horse joy, ease, happiness, makes you feel safe, makes you want to work together. So yeah, they have the hardest time. So the quote, Zen is not about thinking, it's about being awake, emphasizes that Zen practices are not about trying to stop thought, but about staying present and aware of what is happening. Observing thoughts without getting carried away, overwhelmed, flooded by them, which is a form of staying awake. Instead of struggling with thoughts, the practice involves allowing them to arise and pass without clinging to or identifying with them. That's attachment. This fosters a state of complete absorption in the present moment in activity. Let me give you it's not really an exercise, but this is what I teach both in this workshop and in anything you come to, whether it's an immersion, private immersion, or you join my big program. You'll learn this way of connecting to your senses. So this is part of the language of Equus. So this is the language of horses. Horses are always connected to their senses. Their senses are connected to their nervous system. And that is self-preservation. So staying present, one of the easiest ways to begin becoming present and attuned to what you're feeling, what's going on around you, so that you're not so laser focused. Again, this is also how you begin letting go of being laser focused, how you begin letting go of being goal driven, how you begin letting go of having to get there tomorrow. You have to have it all. An overachiever. Definitely through a meditative breath, deep breathing, absolutely, because that is a somatic experience. That is a bodily experience that brings you back into your body, but it's also your senses, what you feel during that process. So, one of the things my students will be experiencing while they are working with me independently, as well as auditing each other and everything they're doing. The horses will be around them. They will be with us all day, free in my training area. And part of what works so well to help us have a spiritual experience where we can connect with nature, connect with others in a way that's silent, is getting back into our senses. What do we smell? What do we hear? Not so much what we see. Our eyes can be very deceiving, and our eyes can actually, they attribute to us getting laser focused, obviously. So often I'll have my students close their eyes while they're learning the breath work that I teach. And when we are out communing, attuning with the horses, I will ask my students as they're sitting down to close their eyes and really heighten their hearing, because there's so many birds around here. I love my flowers and my wildlife. So I'm feeding the birds all the time. There's so many birds, and you hear them talking all the time in the trees, because we'll be under the trees here in my workshop. And the wind, we always have a beautiful breeze here from the Gulf. So they're gonna hear that wind. They're gonna hear the horses breathing, blowing, eating hay. But what do you hear? What do you smell? And then what do you feel? So the number one sense that really helps us, all of us humans, become present is the sense of feel. And so one of the things that I will be working on with my students while they're here is how they feel the horses, how they touch them, the intention, the energy, the emotion, the thought that they put into that touch. An example is most of my students, when they go to touch the horses, they're going to be rubbing them really hard and reckless, I call it. It's this reckless, fractious energy. And often it's because they're excited to be here, nervous. It's a small, intimate group, but it's kind of like performance anxiety for some. And all of that energy gets transferred to the horse directly, because you're a conduit of energy that's now touching and connecting to the horse's energy. So it's just amazing. My horses are schoolmasters. They're not affected by that. They are in different ways, but it's a teaching way. They're not like scared of you. My horses, and we would like all of our horses, just like the wild horse. My method follows the wild, because I've studied wild horses, worked with wild horses, but we want our horses to have a healthy level of autonomy. All right. So they're not like depending on us. They do, but they don't. There's a healthy level of interdependence as well. But my horses are autonomous. Like they're like, hey, that's your juju. You're not scaring me. I don't have to worry about that. But how many of our horses our own personal horses are deeply, easily affected by our attitude or how we feel that day. A lot of inconsistencies. So those are the things we focus, some of the things we focus on in this workshop. And I'm giving you some real life examples of how to help yourself let go and be in the moment. So there are similar concepts in Taoism, because we're talking about Zen right now, and Buddhism, especially through the principles of Wu Wei, effortless action, in the cultivation of mental stillness. So breath work is just the number one. That and paying attention to your senses. I call it heightened senses. You're focusing on what you hear, what you smell, and what you feel. So anything that relates to the body, the senses, it's a somatic experience. It gets you out of your head, and it immediately grounds you and makes you present. The more you do it all the time, you can do all of this anywhere. You can do it in the office. You can do it while you're driving, and all of these things, whether it's the breath work or it's your senses, all of this you can do without horses. So think if you're practicing this state of calmness and stillness and clarity and congruency, and now you bring that to your horse. So an example would be having someone like me come for the first time to work with you and your horse. I'm going to make immediate changes, positive changes. And it's not just based on skill, it's mostly based, it's not based just on skill, because skill is mechanics and technique. It's mostly about what I bring to the horse, my presence, my presence. And yes, my feel and timing, my ability to stop or pause, be observant of where the horse is in our interactions so that I can do the best I can for that horse to feel confident about their learning experience or their experience with me. And that goes back to you. So if you practice these things all the time throughout the day, and then bring this way of being, and this is spiritual, this is about spirituality, this way of being. So spirituality is a broad concept that encompasses the human search for meaning, purpose, and connection to something bigger than themselves. And so you desiring to have this connection to your horse is spiritual because it's bigger. It's not just about you, it's about your horse. It's bigger than both of you. And it has purpose and it has meaning for both of you because you care about your horse or you care about your dog or that cat or that child that needs a parent. That child could be, anyone's kid. Doesn't necessarily have to be yours. But yeah, I mean, this is the spirituality. Everyone thinks, oh, spirituality's got to be so deep. It is deep, but let's just break it down to basics. I mean, everything can become a spiritual experience if you want it to be. To a point. Don't get me wrong. We're all human, right? Believe me, I still get pissed off. I still have stuff I need to work on. Always. So this way of being, this spiritual way of being, it does lead to inner peace, awe, a sense of interconnectedness, enlightenment. And of course, it can be expressed through religious practices, nature, art, a service, giving, or a philosophical inquiry, and is a universal experience that can evolve throughout life. That is for sure. So Let me go ahead and play this 10-minute video. I think it's wonderful. I hope you will enjoy it. I need to share my screen. I love his voice. If anything, just listening to his voice is going to be really amazing. All right, so you guys should be able to watch this, but obviously this is going to be a podcast, so you're going to be listening. When you seek it, you lose it. The Zen secret of letting go. And here we go.
Begins at the point where there's nothing further to seek, nothing to be gained. Alan Watts.
So I started it a little late. The quote is, Zen begins at the point where there's nothing further to seek, nothing to be gained, by Alan Watts. And I'll be quiet now.
We could see the human condition as quenching a thirst with salt water done repeatedly. We pursue goals that generally require us to pursue other goals. We satisfy our desires, which only leads to the same ones returning, often even more potent. We're looking for a way out, a definitive end of our thirst, an ultimate contentment. Unfortunately, no path seems to lead us there, as if we're stuck in an endless cycle of dissatisfaction. But there's hope. Thousands of years ago, Buddha offered humanity a way out. Thus, Buddhism's philosophical tradition and religion came into existence, and it spread and developed into several schools. One of these schools is Zen Buddhism, prevalent in East Asia. We're about to explore the core of Zen, several key concepts, and how Zen is practiced. Hopefully, at the end of this video, you'll have an idea of what Zen Buddhism is, how it could help quench your thirst by letting go of desires, and how Zen differs from other Buddhist schools, both in theory and practice. But before you let go of desire, if you desire to support this channel, please consider joining my Patreon, where you'll find ad-free videos, have a say in future topics, and even receive free merchandise. You can also follow me on social media for updates, quotes, and more. Thank you, and I hope you'll enjoy this video. Originating in India, Buddhism began spreading through China in the 1st century. Eventually, Chinese Chan Buddhism began to develop in the 6th century, becoming a distinct school of Mahayana Buddhism. It wasn't until the 12th century that Chan Buddhism was first introduced in Japan by a Japanese Buddhist priest named Eisai, although his attempt to establish a lineage failed. After him, other Chan disciples succeeded in establishing Chan Buddhism in Japan, also known as Zen. Zen is a Japanese pronunciation of the same character Chan in Chinese. We'll use the term Zen from now on, as it's the Japanese tradition on which this essay is based. A unique feature of Zen Buddhism is that it's heavily influenced by Taoism, a Chinese philosophy and religion, and to a lesser degree, Confucianism, a Chinese system of thought and behavior. Taoist works like Lao Tzu's Tao Te Ching and the concept of Wu Wei are deeply ingrained in Zen. Zen grew in Japan during the Kamakura period, becoming part of Japanese culture through practices like the tea ceremony, calligraphy, and martial arts. Today, Zen is practiced worldwide, along with other traditions such as Theravada and Vipassana, which are both very popular in the West. But compared to these traditions, Zen has quite a different outlook on spiritual awakening and enlightenment and how it's attained. Within Buddhism, one finds a distinction between two ways of enlightenment, the gradual and the sudden. The Theravada school, which is currently quite popular in the West, emphasizes that enlightenment, or nibbana, occurs gradually, through lots of practice and following the Eightfold Path. In Zen, however, enlightenment is often described as arising from a sudden experience, known as satori. It doesn't arrive slowly and over time. It's immediate, without warning. So imagine a thick layer of clouds between yourself and a sunny blue sky. In the gradual approach, the clouds dissolve one by one. In the sudden approach, however, the clouds are blown away instantly. It's an immediate event, a sudden and profound shift in experience. In the Zen tradition, this moment of insight is called satori. Satori is where the illusion of a separate fixed self and reality is briefly lifted. It offers a direct realization of the true nature of existence, an insight beyond mere intellect, so profound that the illusory sense of separation collapses, and it collapses suddenly, like an explosion or shattering of a mirror. Satori is letting go. It's the sudden dissolvement of all illusion. The water becomes crystal clear, the matrix is unveiled, so to speak, and one realizes how things truly are. Satori is also the starting point of the road to full liberation, enlightenment. The truth is clear, and what's been seen cannot be unseen. Now it's time to get oneself out of this mess once and for all. But where to begin? The starting place of Zen is the present moment, as it's the present where everything happens. There is no time like now. It's when we experience, feel, think, and simply exist. In this regard, Zen aligns itself with Stoicism, Taoism, and other schools of Buddhism. Just read Marcus Aurelius' Meditations, and you'll notice he values the present moment, seeing it as a gift and the only thing we have. Or listen to some Dhamma talks by the Theravada monks, and you'll notice that clinging to past events or worrying about the future are activities to let go of. They obscure the present, where both practice and experience are done. It's also the basis for Wu Wei, a Taoist concept closely related to Zen. From the view of Zen Buddhism, reality unfolds itself in the present. But even though the present is always there, we generally cloud it by all kinds of thinking. Our minds create this barrier between the world and an illusory, separated self. That same mind also turns out to be a master at analyzing, overthinking, planning, and fantasizing. Qualities that have a time and place and can be valued as tools for survival and progress, but also get us into trouble as they cut us off from the direct experience of our surroundings. All these fantasies, concepts, judgments, etc., lead to hesitation and overthinking. We're acting from a place of ego in which past and future abound. The present, and with that I mean the actual clear, undistorted present, therefore becomes small, but the past and the future become big, along with the veil of concepts and ideas we project onto the present. Alan Watts, scholar of Zen and author of The Way of Zen, describes it as follows. When life is empty with respect to the past and aimless with respect to the future, the vacuum is filled by the present, normally reduced to a hairline, a split second in which there's no time for anything to happen. End quote. Zen aims to expand the present moment, which means letting go of what's obscuring it. In other words, clearing the sky of the clouds between ourselves and the atmosphere. A traditional Japanese way of expanding the present is a tea ceremony. During Chanoyu, or the Way of Tea, the participants are entirely devoted to the ceremony, honoring the present moment and seeing it as unique, once in a lifetime, never to be experienced again. The realization that every moment is unique. The Japanese have a term for it, Ichigo Ichie, which I made a separate video about a while ago. In the present, you can experience Satori, the aha moment, the letting go of the ego's illusions. The big question is, how exactly does one attain this sudden awakening? Let's first discuss what not to do, as it's the most apparent trap people tumble into, seeking enlightenment and grasping for it. In Zen, Buddhahood isn't attained. It's already there. We should only burst through the illusions created by our minds to get there. One illusion the mind creates is a false sense of self, the idea that there is a separate, isolated me. I quote, "It is fundamental to every school of Buddhism that there is no ego, no enduring entity, which is the constant subject of our changing experiences. For the ego exists in an abstract sense alone, being an abstraction from memory, somewhat like the illusory circle of fire made by a whirling torch." End quote. This illusion becomes problematic if one desires enlightenment. The ego desires it, but cannot attain it, as enlightenment entails the dissolution of the ego. However, the ego cannot think beyond itself. It cannot create a concept of enlightenment because it's beyond thought. It's the very thing that stands in the way of enlightenment and must be destroyed. But it can only imagine itself as a part of it. It's like a bully looking forward to a party he isn't invited to. The party is a party because he is not there. His absence is why the party is fun. As Dharma master Lok To put it, true nature is mind. The mind is Buddha. The Buddha is Dharma. One should not use the mind to seek mind, the Buddha to seek Buddha, nor the Dharma to seek Dharma. Therefore, Dharma students should suddenly realize no mind and suddenly attain stillness and silence. End quote. The mind cannot grasp the mind. It's like a sword trying to cut itself, teeth trying to bite themselves. The mind seeking to be enlightened is just another construct of the mind, the very thing standing in the way of enlightenment. Thus, from the viewpoint of Zen, when you're seeking Buddhahood, you lose it. The grasping of the mind to become enlightened is precisely why one isn't. I quote, if you seek to understand Dharma better, don't grasp the Sangha. You should realize that there is nothing to seek. Also, do not grasp the Buddha or the Dharma, for again, there's nothing at all to seek. We have now arrived at the ambiguity of Zen, as we've been delving into concepts of Zen, such as the illusions of the self, the nature of the present, and the vanity of seeking and grasping. Putting this all into practice means we should forget about this stuff. Throw everything I said in the garbage. It's like we have explored how a television works, how the circuits operate, how things are connected. But now we're about to watch it. These are two entirely different things. The former entails explanations and rational understandings. The latter requires attention. The ego, the many concepts, the grasping and clinging, the overanalyzing, the worrying, these need to go. But again, we can't use our minds to eliminate these things. We need to see through its illusions. Hence, it's common for Zen monks to talk about Zen as little as possible. Revisiting Zen concepts over and over equals lingering in the mind, the problem they actually intend to solve. We need to stop seeking, not just for enlightenment, but for anything. Because the activity of seeking is driven by a dissatisfied ego. In Zen Buddhism, meditation techniques are used to dissolve the clouds of illusion so that the sky of awareness becomes clear. As Thomas Merton describes, Buddhist meditation, but above all that of Zen, seeks not to explain, but to pay attention, to become aware, to be mindful. In other words, to develop a certain kind of consciousness that is above and beyond deception by verbal formulas or by emotional excitement. Deception in what? Deception in its grasp of itself as it really is. Deception due to diversion and distraction from what is right there. Consciousness itself. End quote. This process is gradual, which seems to contradict Satori, which is a sudden event. But even though the cultivation of the state where Satori may arise is a gradual process, Satori itself still occurs suddenly. We never know when it will happen. Zazen is a meditation method used by Zen practitioners, which is comparable in some ways to Theravada breath meditation. One of the goals of Zazen is developing a deep sense of focus, a right concentration, or one-pointedness, also known as ekagata in Pali. I've encountered countless definitions of this state, which include stillness of mind, being in the present, and a harmony between bodily and mental energy. Unlike conventional concentration, it's relaxed and happens without effort or straining. The present moment becomes robust. There is clarity. There is a lack of mental illusions. Usually, when there is sufficient one-pointedness, the student begins koan practice. Koans are curious dialogues that intend to lay bare the teachings of Zen. They're used to test the student's insight, but also to progress on the path to true liberation. Koans are sophisticatedly created to pierce through rational thinking, to trap it, to exhaust it, so one can experience what's beyond it. Take, for example, a classic koan featuring Zen master Joshu. A monk asked Joshu, a Chinese Zen master, does a dog have Buddha nature or not? Joshu replied, Mu. Without context, this koan can seem puzzling. The answer, Mu, points to a Buddhist teaching of sunyata, emptiness, which denies any fixed essence behind phenomena. including the concept of Buddha nature. Joshu's response challenges the notion of searching for a true nature. There is no concept of true nature. There's just this direct experience beyond conceptual thinking. However, by describing and naming it, I already succumbed to the mind's illusory nature. I'm trying to wash off blood with blood. In essence, Zen isn't a collection of ideas or concepts. It's about direct experience, something beyond words, and impossible to fully grasp with a thinking mind. This experience isn't something I can seek because I can't even comprehend what I'm looking for. So I guess the best way to describe Zen is thank you for watching.
Okay. So that can get a bit complicated. So let's simplify it a little bit. So at the end, Zen, like Taoism, cannot fully be explained. And in my understanding, in practice, it is a way of being. And so we heard the chime at the very end go off, the dong. So that's what I'm trying to bring all of you back to is, what do you feel? Not feel emotionally. What do you feel through your senses? This is how you begin the journey of enlightenment. As I often say in my teachings, especially working with the chakra system, I only work with the first 4 chakras, not all 8 in the human body, because we need to make sure that the first 4, which are closely related to the horse's chakra system as well, their first 4 chakras, we need to make sure that we can connect the first 4 chakras with the horse's 4 chakras. And our first 4 chakras, like the horses, little different, but they're in our body, they're in the same place as they are in the horse, aligned the same way along our spine. But our first 4 chakras have everything to do with our sensory processing. We have the heart chakra. We have the fire chakra below that, our solar plexus. We have the water chakra in our abdomen, and we have the earth chakra at our tail, at the bottom of our seat where we sit, at the bottom of our spine. Earth, water, fire, air. Heart is air. So these first 4 energies are what we're connecting with the horse in all of my work. My students will be experiencing this weekend. This is how we develop the heart coherence. This is how we also strengthen the connection of the nervous systems between both horse and human. Very important. Just like this is it. This is everything. But this is the process. This is the process. And this is how you end up. This is the transformation. This is the transcendence. This is the enlightenment. This is how you become more conscious. It is a process. It is a beautiful spiritual process if you so choose to take it. So thank you for listening. And if anyone's interested to learn more about the spirituality horsemanship workshops, please feel free to email me directly, Caroline at taoofhorsemanship.com, TAOOF horsemanship.com. I should have another one as soon as January. And so I'll be promoting that pretty soon. So please feel free, or please join my website, taoofhorsemanship.com, and you can get alerts to events and special events and promotions that are going on. All right. May you always be one with horses. And as I always say, be well, be the way, be whole. Thank you so much.